going to work on is the bow. The bow is used as a salute. The Japanese use a bow that leans forward at the waist, but in Kung Fu the bow is more of a salute and is a gesture such as greeting with a handshake or a military salute. The bow appears this way, stepping forward, bringing the hands together in the front, and coming back. That's the formal bow. Informal bow is just putting the hands together. Once more, we're going to step forward with the right foot, bring the left foot out nice, gently, bring the hands together in the front, the right hand a fist, the left hand open. The weight distribution is 95% on the front, a back leg, 5% on the front leg. Step back, pull the hands back, and down. And that's the salute. We'll do that at the beginning of class, at the end of class, and you do that at the beginning and end of most of your formal exercises. Once more, this is how the bow goes. Step forward, hands together in the front, and back. There's no forward motion as a bow like there is in the Japanese system. From here, we're going to start working on the stances or postures. These are used in order to maneuver from one place to the other so that you're always on balance. The first one we're going to work on is the horse stance. It's probably the most common used. It is a very versatile stance in the sense that it is used more for practice because it is symmetrical. The horse stance looks this way. The weight distribution is 50-50. The knees are pulled apart, the feet are straight ahead. You do most of the practice routines from the front. However, in practical application, it's used from either side, either offensively or defensively. To show you how it looks in an offensive situation, if an opponent attacks you, you can defend yourself and then be offensive in the horse stance, using the horse stance as an offensive stance or posture to gain full control over the attack. In a defensive situation, the person attacks you, you can step into a horse stance defensively and then attack in another stance offensively. One of the other stances that we're going to use is the bow and arrow stance, and it's very much similar to the horse stance as far as the application is concerned. The feet are pulled apart, the knees are apart. The only difference is that we straighten one leg and shift our hips and face to the side. Now to the left, this is called the left bow and arrow stance. To the right, it's called the right bow and arrow stance. The weight distribution is 80% on the right leg, 20% on the back left leg. If you shift to the other side, it's 80-20 still. This is primarily an offensive stance used almost entirely to attack. For example, a while ago we used a horse stance to block, and the attack was in a bow and arrow. The bow and arrow puts the weight distribution to the front so that most of the force is generated to the opponent. It's almost entirely an offensive stance. Now, the next thing we're going to try to work with are a couple of attacks. The first one is called the back fist strike. The back fist strike uses the two knuckles on the outside tips. The wrist is broken and hyperextended back so that you attack with the very ends of these two knuckles. This is a very fast attack. It's used when you want to stun the opponent very quickly. This way, with a strike to the head or to the body, using the back of the knuckles. It's a very, very fast attack. It's called the back fist strike. Now this is used in a pulling action, practice from crossing the arms and pulling the elbows out away from the body and letting the arms come out and snapping the wrist at the very end. So to practice this, we want to do what we call lateral pulls. These are pulling the body out, away from the center line, using pulls. And to do this, we're going to practice by crossing the arms in front, closing the fist, and pulling, just like you would pull in an exercise like this, except straightening the arms at the very end and bending the wrists so that the knuckles protrude. So let's practice this a couple of times, crossing the arms in front, and then ready, pull. Each time we pull, we have a big exhale, just like this. Again, pull. Now this pulling action should come across from the front all the way to the outside, the shoulders, elbows, and the wrist, so that you attack only with these two knuckles. And this is called the back fist strike. Now one very similar to this is called the inverted bridge hand. The inverted ridge hand strikes with this muscle portion of the hand right here. The thumb is pulled in out of the way, and you attack with this muscle on the outside edge. This is used primarily to soft parts of the body, such as the throat or the neck, side of the neck, or the ribs. It's used in areas where the fist could not necessarily reach, and it's easier to reach with the inside of the hand. This inverted ridge hand is used in the same way that the back fist strike, in the sense that you use the lateral pulls, crossing the arms and pulling to the side and accentuating out at the end. Here again, we're going to hyperextend the wrist so that the wrist is bent as far as it can. This way it doesn't absorb any shock whenever you attack with the object. So that if I struck here and the wrist is hyperextended, you're not going to get any movement of the wrist, so all of the energy goes into the opponent. So to practice this routine, we start off with the palms down, cross the arms in the front, and we pull through the shoulders, out to the elbows, and then through the wrist, and out at the ends. So we practice these several times by crossing in the front, palms down, and pull. Nice and firm, and exhale, pull. Continue, exhale, pull. Striking with this surface right here, pull. So that this hand will strike the opponent nice and squarely on soft parts of the body. Thank you. Now, the next thing that we're going to work with is called the linear pulls. And the linear pulls go forward and backwards this way. And one of the most important things that we do with the linear pulls is the corkscrew punch. It's commonly called the punch because that is the one that we use most frequently. To start this off, you can see that we're going to use the front parts of these two knuckles only. That means you need to make a nice tight fist, curling with the inside fingers first, and the little finger last, bringing the thumb over top and holding it down. Top of the hand is nice and flat so that the wrist is straight. When you talk about the linear pulls, you should imagine that your wrist here has a rope tied to it. It goes out in front of you and attaches to a wall, hooks through a loop and pulls back and is attached to your backhand. So that each time that you pull this hand forward, the other one goes out. And they should go out at the exact same speed. You should not think about how fast you can push this one out, but how quickly you can pull this one back and force this one to go out. So to practice the linear pulls, start off with the left fist forward. Imagine that you have a rope tied to your wrist, out to a wall and back to the other wrist. And as you pull the left hand back, the right hand goes out.